Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Aaron Porras, and coming up in today's newscast, the coronavirus train in Israel is officially off the rails. Government heads reportedly, quote, losing control of the spread of the deadly disease and issuing new restrictions. A right-wing government minister finds himself in hot water as new reports show that he may be serving in his post illegally. And in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic condemning us to lives of virtual solitude, at least one Knesset member is trying to inspire us to get up and move and to find the ninja within. Stay tuned to find out how. Still stopping short of resuming complete lockdowns nationwide, top Israeli officials convened today to issue stronger restrictions on the public as COVID-19 cases spiral out of control. Softer language going out the window, and the government coronavirus cabinet meeting today to discuss new restrictions. The head of Israel's coronavirus advisory panel now saying that we have lost control of the pandemic and that we are now facing Israel's greatest ever national civilian crisis. New restrictions include the closing of bars, clubs, event halls, pools, and gyms. Restaurants and synagogues can open up to a maximum of only 20 people. Public transportation is still running. But again, Prime Minister Netanyahu is now saying that we are not far from another complete closure. Professor Eli Waxman explaining to Israeli media that in today's situation with 1,000 daily infections scattered throughout the country, we can no longer disrupt the chain of infection, even if there were a working system in place to do that, which there isn't. In fact, even the Health Ministry's epidemiological testing system and the Shin Bet Security Service's newly renewed phone tracing programs are far outpaced by the spread of COVID-19. And that's assuming that the phone tracing system even works properly, which new reports say it doesn't. Tens of thousands of Israelis receiving texts over the weekend that they need to enter quarantine, yet many complain that the technology was mistaken and that the contact they supposedly had with infected individuals would have been impossible. So this means that far from flattening the curve as we'd hoped, in a matter of weeks, Israel is expected to experience upwards of 1,200 new patients in serious condition, putting the whole health system in danger of collapse. Already, new infections have brought the currently sick number up to over 11,800, with 90 in serious condition, and the death toll likewise rising to a total of 332. As for new restrictions on the public, to prevent as many infections as possible, Israel's COVID-19 cabinet convening today. Now, the coronavirus pandemic has hurt many workers across the economy, but the tourism industry has nearly completely lost its income. And unlike other sectors that have been supplemented and allowed to restart to a degree, tour guides and tourism-related companies have essentially been left to fend for themselves. So to get the attention they deserve from the Ministries of Finance and Tourism, many have now launched a hunger strike in front of the Knesset.
We are here in front of the Knesset protesting and raising awareness, and he's on the 8th day of his hunger strike, whereas I'm only on the 5th.
Tourism industry affects about 250,000 people in Israel, and it's the 6th largest income to this country. And if tourism will collapse, the country will collapse.
Joining us with more is Israeli tour guide Anat Harel. Anat, it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for coming in. Now, how are you and other tour guides, dealing with this crisis as of late, and are you receiving any assistance or grants?
Okay, so it's a very complicated issue because the tourism industry affects about 250,000 households in Israel. Okay, between bus drivers and people who sell at the market and restaurants and hotel employees and taxi drivers and so on. Tour guides are a very small part of that. We have about 3,000 tour guides in Israel who work exclusively with incoming tourism. We are dead in the water. I mean, we have had no income as of March. Wow. And the problem is that we don't see anything coming up. It's going to be at least a year before we have any substantial income from tourism.
So you're saying, I mean, are we comparing that now with, some European countries who have maybe started to open up their gates a little bit? In Israel, you foresee this continuing, dead in the water for a year?
Well, see, if I could predict when it will come, I'll make $1 million, right? The problem is no one really knows. And what we want, what we demand, what we're asking for, begging the government for is a plan. Okay, sit with us to bring us to the table. We know the tourists that we work with. We have contacts all over the world. We have the contacts that we need in order to encourage smaller families to arrive and restart the process. The problem is no one's talking to us. No one is bringing us to the table to say, let's make a plan together. Once we have a plan, we know how long it's going to be.
What about, local tourism? Because I know that the government started encouraging, a month or so ago, Israelis to travel a little bit.
So tour guides in Israel are divided into two groups. Those that work with incoming tourism, and we are dead in the water, and those who work with internal tourism, which is wonderful. They guide school kids, they guide Israelis because Israelis love to travel. So Israelis now are traveling a lot inside of Israel, but it's not the same tour guides who are doing this. Israeli tour guides who guide Israelis do it in Hebrew and they do different things. We, the incoming tourism tour guides, work with a different community, and it's a completely different thing.
Well, I'm sure even locally the business is hurting.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we saw earlier some tour guides who are on a hunger strike. Have they heard any official response? Have they received any response?
No, not really. It's only been in the last couple of days that several Knesset members stepped out of the Knesset and came across the street and sat down with them to talk. Wow. And one of the most fascinating things is that Peter, the one who started the hunger strikes, this past Sunday, which was yesterday, he actually stopped the hunger strike and went on reserve duty. He has to complete his reserve duty to serve the country that he's protesting with a hunger strike. And then when he's done with the reserve duty, he's going to come back on hunger strike. All we want is to be paid attention to. Help us out because we are the face of Israel. We are the Israeli ambassadors that meet tourism or the tourists when they come into the country.
All right. Now, what solutions, in the interim at least, do you offer that are enabling you to continue to work at least a little bit and to get some sort of income? There
is no work. I mean, we don't have any work right now. So right now, we've been paying taxes. We've been paying Social Security all through this time. I mean, meaning that's what we do. We're self-employed and we're sometimes salaried. But tour guides are divided into different groups, those that work on a salary, those that work with invoices, those that have their own touring cars. Each one of us has a different category in the tax ministry, okay? And so there are tour guides who have received nothing for 4 months, no help. We want every one of us to give us help, let us breathe, at least maintain us above water, because if not, we're not going to survive.
Anat Harel, thank you so much for shedding a light on this.
Thank you for this.
All right, no glove, no love, taking on new relevance in the first half of 2020 as the Israeli health ministry is recording a net increase in sexually transmitted infections despite coronavirus lockdowns and social distancing orders. In fact, hitting record numbers, there have been 860 confirmed cases of chlamydia and 314 new cases of gonorrhea since January this year. To make matters worse, the numbers are likely way higher than we know of, according to experts who believe that infected people are probably still spreading without knowing it, because due to coronavirus, many are unlikely to seek medical attention until it's too late, leaving easily treatable diseases to lead to very serious complications. On to politics now. A number of new coalition appointees are finally taking their place within the new government. But one Knesset member and minister's political present and future could actually be in jeopardy. Nittany Manson reports.
Former Education Minister Rafi Peretz made major headlines earlier this year when he split from the right-wing Yamina faction to sit in the coalition with co-prime ministers Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz. But it seems Peretz may have accidentally killed his career in politics with this controversial move by becoming a so-called secessionist MK. Secessionist MKs are prohibited by basic Israeli law, both from serving in cabinet posts and from running for Knesset again in any existing party. So how did this happen? Well, currently, Peretz, who heads the Jewish Home Party, is serving as the new Minister of Jerusalem Affairs and Heritage, and he got the position by leaving the Yamina faction, which stayed in the opposition. But Knesset records show that neither Yamina nor Peretz ever formally requested the split, and the Knesset never voted to approve it either, which is required by law. Now, in other news, as Peretz's future is called into question, MK Gilad Erdan has been approved as Israel's new ambassador to the United Nations, as well as to the United States come January 2021. He'll be taking over for Dani Danon and Ron Dermer, respectively, and he's been replaced as outgoing Minister of Regional Cooperation by MK Ophir Akunis.
אין ספק שהזירה של האו"ם והזירה של ארצות הברית הן הזירות הבינלאומיות החשובות ביותר שיש לנו. אנחנו שולחים אותך לשם עם, הייתי אומר, עם ציפייה גדולה וגם עם ידיעה שאנחנו נאותגר שם ואנחנו סומכים עליך שתעשה שם את העבודה.
Erdan accepting his appointment, saying he's going to represent Israel with tremendous pride. Meanwhile, speaking of Israeli foreign affairs, Yishmael Chaldi also making headlines this week, being tapped to serve as the new ambassador to Eritrea, and this making him the first Bedouin Israeli in history to serve as an Israeli ambassador abroad. But scaring the public, all these appointments could still be for nothing if Israel falls back to fourth elections over failure to pass a government budget. Alternate Prime Minister and Defense Minister Gantz sticking to his guns on calling for a 2-year budget to be passed, while leading Prime Minister Netanyahu threatens to collapse the coalition unless a 1-year budget is approved.
Joining us now to expand on the current political crisis, founder and president of the Jerusalem Washington Center, Gideon Israel. Gideon, thanks for being with us. Now, what's going on with the government budget? Where's this disagreement between Gantz and Netanyahu coming from? Gantz, again, wanting a 2-year budget and Netanyahu wanting it annually.
So part of the coalition agreement is that there should be a 2-year budget. So Benny Gantz's position seems pretty logical. This is the agreement. Let's have a 2-year budget because it also provides stability for the country economically, for the health ministry, and for all that needs to be done facing the crises that are now happening. However, for Netanyahu wants a 1-year budget because it gives him the option to topple the government, or one of the thoughts is that it gives him the option to topple the government over the 2020 budget. Meaning if Netanyahu decides next year not to pass the budget and the government topples, so then the prime ministership doesn't go to Benny Gantz, it stays with Netanyahu. But usually, if the government is dispersed, then the prime ministership goes to the other person, which would be Netanyahu, which would be Benny Gantz. So the budget gives sort of a Netanyahu a way to get out of the current coalition, call for new elections without having to step down as prime minister.
All right. Well, I want to move on now to Rafi Peretz, formerly of the Yamina party, because currently it's in debate. Is he a secessionist MK or not?
Well, I think the whole story with Rafi Peretz is a tragedy. Naftali Bennett, as you may recall, left the Jewish home and the party was in shambles before the election. Rafi Peretz was asked to come on and to save the party. Fast forward a year later, and there already been 2 elections, and Yamina and the Jewish Home were already looking to do primaries to decide who should be the leader of the next party. And very unfairly, Peretz hadn't had a chance to prove himself, to show that he could do anything. So Peretz went to the Jewish Resilience Party and sort of made a pact with them to sort of augment his political power. And then Smotrich and Bennett said they weren't going to join with him. And then at the last minute, the rabbis came to Peretz and said, after being pressured by Netanyahu, and said, listen, if Peretz doesn't join together with Smotrich and Bennett, it's just going to be a loss of votes for the right wing coalition, and therefore he betrayed his partnership with Israel Resilience and ran with Yamina. So he's sort of been all over the place, hasn't had a chance to prove himself, and he sort of destroyed himself politically. So whether he's officially a secessionist MK or not really doesn't matter. His political future doesn't seem very bright.
So what happens now with that?
So what happens now is he remains sort of a one-party MK within the government. He is a minister for Jerusalem and some other things attached to it. I think if he does a lot of good things, that it's so great that people forget all the political mishaps that he did before that, he might be able to join in some type of right-wing party for the next election. But barring a situation like that, it seems that he'll probably just retire after this government coalition is finished, be it in 3 months or 3 years.
All right. Now, while the annexation that was supposed to happen last week has become essentially irrelevant, Prime Minister Netanyahu and government ministers appear to be trying not to talk about the issue, to really avoid it. What do you think they prefer? Do you think that they prefer to forget about the annexations altogether?
Well, one of the problems is that for this whole Trump plan, there's neither a united front in America nor there's a united front in Israel. Obviously, Gantz and Ashkenazi don't want this plan in Israel, and Netanyahu does want it. Add in the fact that you have the Judean Samaria Council saying this isn't a good plan and just apply sovereignty. And the United States, I've heard, it's not verified, but I've heard that Pompeo and Vice President Pence, are not so happy with the plan because this is essentially, they feel, another two-state solution plan, and this is more of Jared Kushner's plan. So there's not a united front neither in the United States, neither in Israel to push it forward. It seems like there isn't an appetite for it. Add on to the fact that the evangelicals, that it was Mike Evans was quoted saying that that Trump must recognize has to recognize Jewish sovereignty if he wants the evangelical vote. And the evangelical vote is very important for Trump, not because they're going to vote for Biden, but I believe he got something like 81% of the evangelical vote in 2016. He needs every single vote to win in 2020. So that's another direction of pressure on him. But I just want to mention, I think that this is a huge tragedy because Netanyahu has been prime minister for 10 years. Sure. Trump's been president for 3 years. There was enough time.
We're going to need to see
Israel.
Yeah, we're going to need to see how that works and whether or not that support from the United States will come through in the end. Gideon, Israel, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to cut it off. Thank you so much for being with us.
Sure.
Tensions in the Middle East rising rapidly. Israel now issuing its latest response to threats from the Islamic Republic of Iran. With sounds of thunder and lightning, Israel's new Ofek 16, or Horizon 16 reconnaissance satellite, broke into orbit Monday morning at 4 a.m. from the Palmachim airbase. The optoelectronic satellite boasts advanced capabilities and improved precision and follows the Ofek 11, which was launched in 2016. Defense Minister Benny Gantz hailing the launch, calling it a mighty achievement for the defense industries in general and for Israel Aerospace Industries, which partnered in the project in particular. Now, while the launch has been in the works for months, Ofek 16's mission, among other things, has already been directed at keeping tabs on Iran, especially as Iran continues to develop its nuclear and missile capabilities. This new directive also follows several mysterious explosions and cyber attacks targeting Iranian military and research facilities over the past few weeks, including at the Natanz Nuclear Center, the Kojir Missile Manufacturing Plant, the Zargan Power Plant, and the Karun Petrochemical Center. Sources in the Middle East claiming Israel is responsible for these targeted attacks, which Iranian officials now admit caused considerable damages to their sensitive facilities. Israel then also now reportedly preparing for potential Iranian retaliation in the form of cyber attacks, missile attacks from Syria, or some other such assault. Israeli Defense Minister and alternate Prime Minister Benny Gantz still playing off accusations, though, saying on public radio that everyone can be suspicious of us all the time, but that not every event that happens in Iran is connected to us. That said, he adds that, quote, a nuclear Iran is a threat to the world and the region, as well as a threat to Israel, and we will do everything to prevent that from happening. Iran, for its part, also now increasing its threatening rhetoric. Top commanders within the IRGC's Navy claiming Sunday that Iran has built underground missile cities all across the coasts of the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, cities that would, quote, be a nightmare for Iran's enemies. All right, you may recall an incredible new innovation from last April in which Tel Aviv University researchers developed a miniature 3D printed human heart, complete with tissues extracted from a patient. Well, now these printed hearts are being put to the test. Through a new collaborative agreement with pharma giant Bayer, researchers are testing the cardiotoxicity of new experimental drugs. And this innovative process could turn contemporary drug production completely upside down. Because unlike current tests with one type of cell at a time and on a petri dish, these printed organs contain a muscle, blood vessels, and more, and in 3D with potential to dramatically cut down the time and money that it takes to produce safe and effective meds. Now, I don't know about you, but in these trying times, I'm in serious need for an update in the world of entertainment and culture. Thankfully, we have Emmanuel Kadosh to give us the rundown. Emmanuel, take it away.
Hey, Aaron. So let's get started first off with none other than Israeli Wonder Woman herself, Gal Gadot. She arrived in Israel last month and went straight into quarantine in a villa in the city of El Suf with her family. However, according to reports, she was hosting people that were not considered her immediate household or family, therefore breaking the rules of the home isolation for the 2-week period.
Listen, I get it. It's hard to get to another country and to be isolated for half a month. The numbers are really not in our favor these days. We all have to be very extra careful.
I agree, and I think she figured that out slowly. She was filming a commercial to help encourage Israelis to go out and watch movies in the theaters when they were still supposed to open, of course. But since the new restrictions have come out, it doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon. She actually wasn't just doing this to encourage people to watch her latest film, Wonder Woman 1984, but for everyone to go and watch films in an effort to support the movie theaters that, of course, have been losing money around the country.
All right, well, I read somewhere that, her and her agent had their own sets of restrictions before getting to the set of the commercial. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Gadot and her agent decided that anyone that was going to be setting foot on the shoot had to get a corona test and come back with, of course, a negative result before setting foot on the set. That was meant for cameramen, makeup artists, set designers, sound and lighting crew, everybody.
All right, well, I mean, it makes sense and probably should be a protocol that's used pretty much everywhere.
Right.
Unfortunately, as of now, it doesn't really seem like going to the theaters, let alone watching the second Wonder Woman movie, is going to happen. But if we all follow the restrictions and stay safe, maybe it could happen in the near future?
Maybe.
All right, anyway, what's up next?
So up next, the team from my personal favorite TV show, The Marvelous Miss Maisel, discovered a very interesting way to put their creativity to the test during this pandemic. And that's what they did with this 10-minute video featuring all kinds of music and performances from the homes of the show's stars. Take a look.
I love that show. But for those who haven't seen it, Emmanuel, can you give us a rundown on what it's about and why they decided to make this video?
Of course. So basically, the show is essentially about a hilarious Jewish housewife that decides to break free of the traditional housewife duties and becomes a stand-up comic in the early 1960s. If you haven't seen it already, I'm almost kind of jealous, but basically they decided to make this video that debuted on Monday in order to promote the show's Emmy Award bid. Unfortunately, due to everything going on, the taping of the 4th season is delayed.
All right, well, definitely go and watch this show again.
Yes.
It's hysterical. If you haven't already, it's on Amazon Prime, and of course, watch the full 10-minute video that the cast and crew created. Emmanuel, thank you so much for the update.
Of course.
All right, do you have what it takes to be a ninja? For most of us, including myself, the answer is a comfortable no. But the jury is still out for Israeli Knesset member Yoel Razvozov. The Israeli Olympian turned politician is reportedly training hard while in talks with the production company of Ninja Israel, with hopes of negotiating a VIP episode and a promotional interview. Speaking with Israeli news company Ynet, Razvozov says that he hopes to lead by example and inspire the younger generation to participate in sports rather than spending the entire day in front of a screen. Now let's take a look at the weather forecast. You can expect a mostly clear evening with lows tonight sitting at a warm average of 72 Fahrenheit or 22 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow should be sunny and hot with a rise in temperatures to an average of 91 degrees Fahrenheit or 33 degrees Celsius. And now before we go, let's take a look at what's going viral in Israel. Now, if you're listening to the screams, you would be right to be very worried. This is the first whale shark sighting off of the coast of Eilat. But thankfully, again, whale sharks are harmless. So that's very thankful for all the swimmers involved. All right, that is it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.43 shekels to the American dollar. For more news from ILTV, please like ILTV on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube and Roku TV pages. I'm Aaron Porras. Thank you so much for watching.